Okay, we'll call the council meeting of June 15th to order. And I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. Let's stand for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Record of attendance, we're good. No absent regrets. Any declarations of conflict of interest, you can declare at the time of the agenda item, or you can declare now. Good? Okay. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions? No, that's right. I was just testing. Did it work? Okay. So let's do a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Thank you. Councillor Cleveland, seconded by Councillor Lesser. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Approval of minutes, Town Council, May 11th, please. Councillor Heather, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Committee of the Whole, May 16th, please. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Cleveland. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Committee of the Whole, May 23rd. Councillor Lesser, seconded by Councillor Heather. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we have a public hearing. There are two items, 9A and 9B. So what happens here for the folks that have never been to a public hearing, I will just ask 3 times. If somebody would like to speak to the issue, I'll read one. We'll go through one at a time. And then you would come up to the microphone right here. You have to sing us a song to make sure, just seeing if you're paying attention. And they were, look at that. And just tell us your name and where you live, and then share whatever it is you wish to share. And then council doesn't, this is not where council debates anything, just a little bit later, actually right after in the agenda, it's brought up for council because this is second reading, and we make a decision there. So I'll ask 3 times. You can come up. We usually say, 10 minutes max, but whatever you need. So the first one is the short-term rental agreement amendment that council amend the municipal planning strategy, MPS, and the land use bylaw, LUB, to allow short-term rental accommodations within residential dwellings. Would anyone like to speak to this? Okay, so you can, Carol, you can come up first. And then I see Jack's hand. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carol Wetmore. I own a home on William Street here in Yarmouth, purchased in 2011. I am originally from Sanford, my husband from Beaver River. My husband and I, along with another couple here in the town, Harry and Yvette Frost, purchased a derelict house, sorry,
Got lots
on
of those,
Albert
too.
Street. And this was a house that I had walked my dog by for several years. No one had lived in it, didn't have heat, water, kitchen, bathrooms, the back was rotted out. We purchased this property and we spent considerable funds to renovate it. And at the end of the renovation project, we had run into overcost, as you do in an 1860s house. And we looked at trying to get money back. We looked at the long-term rental situation. That would not have allowed us to get enough funds in order to meet our financial obligations. We also looked at if we had sold the property, the real estate market, at that time, we would not have recovered. So the ferry had just started, I believe, in 2018. We were finishing up our renovation, and we heard that accommodations were needed in the town of Yarmouth. We approached the town. We told them that we would like to run an Airbnb. We felt that that would be beneficial for the town. It would be financially beneficial for us to meet our obligations. We visited all of the neighbors. We asked them what they thought of us running an Airbnb. They were very happy that we had come into their neighborhood and that we had fixed the area up and we had taken this old house and turned it into a beautiful, we call it a Victorian cottage. And we left our phone number with the neighbors if there were any trouble. We have never, to my knowledge, ever had any complaints, any problems, no vandalism, anything of that sort. Airbnb is a very unique property. Our particular property, and they can vary greatly, but our particular property is a detached house that we configured so that it can be open to the use of a family. It has 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. There's a connecting laundry room that we can lock doors off and have it as a 2-bedroom house and a studio unit. We meet the zoning for that area, which is R1, which when we use it as 2 units, we conform with that. Because it is unique, it's been used by visiting doctors coming into the area. Last time we had a specialist that stayed there with his family and 3 children for a little over a month, I believe. Harry might be able to. We've had tradespeople, we've had people from Yarmouth coming back to visit family, we've had wedding parties that have stayed there. We have a kitchen that people can eat if you have dietary needs or other things that you have to be concerned about. You can prepare your own meals. There's a yard for the children to play in. There's the laundry facility. So we're quite unique. The traditional hotel motel situation does not fit everybody. When you look at tourism around the world, Airbnb is something that you expect. We're a tourist destination here. We have the ferry that comes in. When we have the ferry come in, for example, we've had families, brothers, sisters, their children, grandparents, and they have stayed at our property. They are all together. They can afford to come. They may not have been able to come if they had to do the traditional stay in a hotel, eat all their meals out, and that sort of thing. What I would like to petition, I know that the council and with the new recommendations with the bylaws would like us to do a development agreement. It is my hope, given the situation that we have been open with the town from the beginning. We've had all inspections from Tourism Nova Scotia. We've had inspections for insurance. We've done everything that we can to be legally operated, a safe environment for our visitors. We're giving a special type of product here. One of the changes for the bylaw was it had to be owner occupied. somehow, for example, families that come, or this doctor that stayed with us last summer, I don't think he would have been very happy if I set up shop in the house with them. They had 3 children under the age of 10. You know, the kids were there by themselves. They could make as much noise as they wanted. I guess what I'm saying is that you have your traditional hotel-type Airbnbs, but then there are other types of Airbnbs, such as ours, that don't sort of fit all models. But I would ask and petition that the council would take into consideration, you know, all Airbnbs on a per-case basis and how they fit into the model that you want to approve or to have in your town. The other one that I had a bit of concern as well, and again, this would affect us, is that the 1 unit per property. So in our particular case, we can have 2 units, and we aren't owner occupied. So that does affect us directly. I will say it might not be owner occupied, but I can stand in my window, my living room window, and see my Airbnb on Albert Street. I see the visitors, I see them come, I see them go, I can keep an eye on them when I'm at home. What I am hoping and asking to have approval, that we can be grandfathered in and not have to go the route of a development agreement, and mainly being, we've already have an existence there, a presence, we've already contacted neighbors, we have a history with them, they like that we're there, we keep our property nice and neat, we're pleasant to deal with. They're happy not to have a derelict vehicle in a house. So anyway, I guess to end it all, I do have a letter that I have done up that I would like to leave with council and Mayor Mood. And there were some questions here that, and I won't get you to answer them tonight, but there's certain things I think that would be good that I think you have to, as a council, for the town, to make some decisions that are going to be good, you know, for all the stakeholders here. And that, I guess my hope is that a fair and equitable decisions and outcome can be made when it comes to Airbnbs. But I guess if there's anything that I can leave with you, I am against that an owner has to be on site, and that if there is more than 1 unit, look at things on a case-to-case basis. Visitors coming across on our ferry, they have to have a place to stay. I don't know how many accommodations there are in the town, how many Airbnbs, but I know that when we opened, the minute we put our ad on the Airbnb website, we were booked almost. There was a great need. If we don't have people to stay when that ferry stops and they get off in the evening, they're going to go elsewhere with their dollars. Or they may stop coming because they can't find a place to stay. And if they don't come, unfortunately, what will the provincial government do when the ferry contract is ready to be renewed? So anyway, I do, and I'm not sure who I would give it to, but I have done a letter up that I would like to leave with you. It does have some questions in it, and I'm not going to keep you here all evening going through those. Anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Jack Churchill from Yarmouth. I'm a resident in Dayton. And it's got a couple of quick questions. I did do a proposal out, and did everybody? Okay, you got that. The second question I've got is this coming from this drive for the short-term rentals? Is this something that you need to implement, or is it a suggestion? Where is this all coming from? That's before I begin.
Let's share that one. We have provincial legislation that came down, so we had to react to that.
But do you have to execute on that? Do you have to
Yes.
implement?
Yes.
Yes, Aaron, you can chime in on this
Yeah.
if you If you're,
Erin's-
sorry, Erin's the planner
Yeah.
on the
You
screen.
can see her over here.
Okay.
I was wondering what,
Sorry.
So, but my understanding,
so who's Erin?
Erin's our planner.
She's your planner. Okay.
go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Through the chair. So as the mayor responded, there is changes to the Provincial Tourist Accommodation Act that requires anybody that has kind of roofed accommodation, whether that's principal residence, whether it's a trailer on their property, whether it's an additional dwelling out the back, whether it's more what you consider, a hotel, motel, bed and breakfast uses, to register on their new registry system. As part of that process, they're asking applicants to confirm whether or not they meet the zoning for their municipality. So that's resulting in folks coming to the municipality looking for confirmation that this can happen within their zone. Right now, the way the bylaw is written, short-term rental uses such as this are not permitted. Dwelling unit, the definition of it actually, in the definition of dwelling says, shall not include a hotel, motel, or apartment hotel use. And then if you go and look at what the definition of that is, it means accommodation to the traveling public. So the way that the bylaw is set up now, the town would be unable to issue any sort of confirmation that says, yes, you were able to meet the zoning requirements. So the changes that are proposed now are an effort to put something in place that would then allow the town for the land use, for the applications that come in that meet the proposed changes, or anything that council should decide tonight, to be able to allow the development officer to say, yes, this is an allowed use here, and then you can take that to the registration system and get your number and then list it on the Airbnb to be compliant with the provincial regulations.
Does that help?
No. My question is, and excuse me, but I appreciate the explanation, but when you get what my question is when something comes down from Halifax, like a suggestion, is it a suggestion?
No,
to
it's
consider?
legislation.
It's legislation. So this is legislation that you have to implement.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. So, go ahead. Am I wrong?
Well, the legislation puts a requirement on you as an owner-operator of a roofed accommodation to confirm that you meet the zoning requirements of the town. And as Aaron explained, we currently don't allow, in our land use bylaw, a rental, short-term rental within residential property. So the amendment that's proposed actually identifies it, defines it, and makes it possible for the town to write you a letter and say, Mr. Churchill, your properties are in compliance with the land use bylaw. You can take that to the province and you're completely within the bounds of the law.
So, and that has to be done through a development agreement.
Well, in some cases, it can be done through a development agreement, in some cases as of right.
As a what?
As of right. So
I'm sorry, Jeff, I missed it.
as of right. So
Oh, right.
The case that the previous speaker mentioned, if you have one unit in your home that you live in, so
Oh, yes, yeah. That wouldn't pertain to me.
We can just
right?
do you a development permit.
So what I just want to know how much, like I've got 15 minutes, I got a 4-minute mini presentation, and I got the other one that I passed out to you. And I just don't want to spend time on something that I don't know what I'm really addressing. So in my case, what we had discussed is that I should be okay by going through a development agreement. Okay. But the second thing, I guess, that the essence of what I'm addressing wasn't for me, it was for the tourism as a whole for the town, right? If I'm okay through development agreement, then my selfish needs are met. But what I'm looking at is from the perspective of what's good for the town.
Right.
So if you have to implement this, then there's no sense in me doing a presentation if you have to implement it. But so I guess that's my question. That's like, do you get to adjust the policy that they send down from Halifax, or?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And maybe I'm off. Are you feeling like because of what HRM had to do in their situation, That's it. That's the feeling I'm getting from you.
HRM has shut down Airbnbs in
Yes.
Halifax as of September.
So this is, and you, again, correct me if I'm off, but this is not our intention. We know we need Airbnbs. We know we need, we just need fixed roof accommodations. We have tourism, we have the boat,
Yeah.
we have more than that. What we're trying to do is, because you legally need to register with the province, you can't register until,
I'm all registered.
Yeah,
but-
you
but
are.
I'm not in compliance with the zoning. And
exactly. So we're trying to help you get there.
you promise?
I,
I know politicians, man. Okay, so what will, all right, I think I understand.
we are not, we're two different places. And I think this has thrown some folks off. We're two different places. HRM has an issue. We don't have that issue yet. We don't have either enough Airbnbs, or we don't have Airbnbs that are
Well,
messing with the neighborhoods and things like that. But we do want to be able to make sure that they don't as well. So
the former finance minister said that in order to do what's got to be done with tourism, we need all hands on deck.
absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's my concern. But I mean, when you look at Yarmouth, there's been a lot of businesses and industries that have come and closed, whether it's Domtax over the years or Rio Algam. But what stayed here has been fishing and tourism. Those are our mainstays.
Yeah.
Right? And the hotels and the motels are needed. They're required. But there are a group of travelers that come for an adventure. And to some people, an adventure is just exploring 2 or 3 different beaches, right? And we have 5 or 6 locally. So anyway, let me get into this. And the first part, again, the reason why I'm here, because I think this is very important for Yarmouth, and I've just got a 4-minute sort of economical historical contrast that I wanted to go through, and it's by no means comprehensive, but I think it shows that the town of Yarmouth, we have to look after ourselves here, and we can't take direction from Halifax or Ottawa all the time if we can get around it. Okay, I shall begin. 4 minutes. Gil, would you mind timing me on this? That's my maximum on this one.
I got you timed here.
Okay. 1874 to 1885, Yarmouth was the second largest port of registry, major shipbuilding center. The population in 1881 in Yarmouth was 5,324 people. In 2021, 140 years later, we had moved up 28%, with 6,829 people. Now, let's contrast the Canadian population. In 1881 was 4.3 million. In 2021, it's 38 million, up 884%. In 1971, the population of Yarmouth was 8,519 people. 2021, it was 6,829, which was a population drop of 20%. In Canada, on the other hand, from 1971 to 2021, there was the population increased by 77%. So there's something we're not keeping up with a normal population growth. During the 1870s, there was a locally owned here industry called Western Counties Railway from Yarmouth to Digby. The 1880s, Yarmouth Steamship Company created the first tourism marketing effort in Nova Scotia between Boston and Yarmouth. It was later replaced by the MV Bluenose. That was the Yarmouth Steamship Company. Yarmouth's Merchant Marine Institution issued master papers to the first female ship captain in the Western world by the name of Molly Cool. So Yarmouth has done some cool things and was very prominent at one point. Economically, I'm guessing very wealthy if you look around at all the captains' houses, the sea captains' houses in Yarmouth. In the 1940s, we had three training camps for the Royal Canadian Air Force. In 1987, we had Rio Algam tin mine open. Now, let's go on the other direction, because I kind of titled this as a roadmap to poverty. So we know where we were and what we had at one point. 1991, the cotton mill closes after 108 years. We lost 300 jobs. 1992, Rio Algom closes, another 250 jobs. 1990, Yarmouth had no trains running. Air Canada in 1989 turned ops over to Air Nova, 1999 possibly. 1999 turned their operations over to Air Nova, ceased operation in 2003. We lost our air travel. In 2012, Acadian Bus Line ceased. The CATS funding by the province ceased in 2009. Again, in 2018, it was started up on a tentative basis. In a discussion in early 2023 of possibly canceling it again. The highways are twin from Halifax to Sydney and have been for a long time. There's intermittent twinning from Halifax to Yarmouth. But I tell you, it's a lot easier to drive from Halifax to Sydney than it is from Halifax to Yarmouth. There's a lot of wealth siphoning that's going on in the economy. More businesses are selling to outside interests, i.e. the insurance industry, local radio station, malls, hotels, motels. These are all owned by people not living in Yarmouth. That impacts our wealth factor tremendously in this town. That profit is just going out of town. The average income in Yarmouth is 38% less than the provincial average. 57% of the housing stock in Yarmouth are rented units. 45% of Yarmouth tenants don't have enough money for a down payment, and I'm referring to the same study that I cite in my presentation to you. Now here's a scary fact. From 2006 to 2016, according to that same study that I referred to, the population age 65 and over increased 30% in Yarmouth. So that's a heavy population of retired people. 70% of our population in the town earn less than $40,000 a year. The town being the lowest municipal unit, 35% lower than the Yarmouth municipality and 41% lower than the Argyle municipality. In 2018, we had a wait list for social housing of 51 families and 72 seniors. So what I see as a risk to the town is our population. We're not growing, and it's getting older. So who's going to support the older people? And where's the economy going to come from if that's not addressed? Right? And what I'm looking at is a much bigger problem than Airbnb units that are 1.1% of the total housing stock in Yarmouth now, approximately. So I think we need to take a look at our population before there's nobody left. Okay. Bill, how do you do?
You did 5.5 minutes?
I ad-libbed too much. Okay.
You ad-libbed perfectly.
I'm going to stick to the script. So now I'm going to talk about short-term rentals because I don't think it's right that somebody in Halifax can come up with a proposal or a plan and ship it down to the town council or any other municipal unit and say, this is what you got to do. Right? That was my original thought coming in here. Now, I didn't read the way that it was presented, the way that Jeff mentioned it, that it's to help you get compliant. Right? Now, okay, that part of it makes sense. But that's not what they did in Halifax, and that's in the back of my head, right? But nevertheless, I still don't think that the town of Yarmouth or any municipal unit should be being run from Halifax or from Ottawa. I think we need to know our own problems because it hasn't worked so far, right? There's nobody coming down helping us build our economy. So the purpose of my presentation is to challenge the proposed changes, or it was, to the provincial municipal planning strategy of restricting Airbnb operators in the town of Yarmouth. If a proposed change or restriction doesn't make sense to the betterment of the town, then it shouldn't be implemented. Now, I wrote this knowing that I can get a development agreement to protect me anyway. I'm talking about overall for the town of Yarmouth, to be able to take care of people that are coming in here, don't want to stay in motels and hotels, right? People that want a destination to go to have some lobster. My intention is to prove that restricting short-term rentals is not a good decision for the town and discourages investment. Okay, Pam, the proposed purpose, allow one dwelling unit per lot to be used as short-term rental, provided the short-term rental operator host lives on the same lot. Doesn't make sense to me, that part, Jeff. Enable council to consider expanded short-term rental uses by development agreement, which includes opportunity for public input. That part makes sense. I understand that. Now, the purpose. The town must protect housing stock amid a growing industry, or the Airbnb. According to the staff report, about 1.5% of Yarmouth's dwellings are short-term rental. Well, 57% of the Yarmouth's housing stock is already long-term rental. So 1.5% isn't going to do anything to impact long-term rentals from short-term rentals. Total housing units in the town of Yarmouth, there are different numbers that you can interpolate. It's around 3,000, again, of which 57% of the dwellings are rented. As of June the 13th, 2023, according to the best information that I could get from Airbnb, there are 34 units available in the town of Yarmouth, which represent 1.1% of the total housing units in the town. So, Airbnb units of short-term rentals isn't going to impact long-term rentals. Now I'm going to go over the benefits of the Airbnb operations. Additional wealth to the local economy that stays in the local economy. Profits are not siphoned off to head offices. Operators are able to keep their properties in good condition and pay their property taxes in a timely way from extra profit. And that's important, right? Unique experiences or home-like lodging to travelers looking for hotel or motel alternative lodging. Utilizes Airbnb global network and advertising by attracting more visitors to Yarmouth through the Airbnb platform. It's a unique platform. Guest rating on that platform encourages the host to maintain high-quality service, thereby enforcing a positive stay in the town. Hosts are able to provide flexible pricing for longer stays, keeping the guest in town longer, spending more money. Airbnb requires Nova Scotia tourist registration, ensuring collection of GST and occupancy taxes, and submits the same to the appropriate government collection agency. Now, the summary of benefits for the town. A supportive municipal effort encouraging Airbnb operators to the town can attract entrepreneurs from afar to establish and contribute to the wealth of the town, supporting number one above, the additional wealth. When the ferry restarted in 2016, ferry visitors were having to drive as far away as Shelburne and Annapolis to find lodging, pushing expenditures to those other areas. Those that did stay complained loudly about the lodging cost and the quality. An organic, growing, self-supporting industry, which is already able to take place without having to get any government incentives, which if encouraged can provide more wealth for the town and healthy competition to the motels and hotels. The benefit to the town is that lower lodging costs will keep the traveler in town longer and incent the hotels and motels to keep their facilities updated. I'm not going to read the Airbnb myths, but the first myth is that Airbnb operators are depleting the rental housing market. You guys have read this, and I think I've already touched on it. That's not happening. It's factually inaccurate, and it's factually inaccurate in Halifax as well. So you have to wonder why did Halifax do that? Was it because of people, certain few people that were crying loud about no rental housing shortages, or is it another lobbying effort by competitors saying, "Oh, we just don't want these people in here doing this. It's eating into our profits," right? I don't know. But if you take a city like Halifax that last year had 27,000 people move into it, and they built 1,762 new rental units, there's a housing problem. And according to the Coast, there's been 20,000 new people coming into Halifax for several years. They're not keeping up. So myth number 2, restricting Airbnb operators in town will protect the housing stock and affect historic districts. I don't think so, because again, to the Airbnb rating system, if you're not providing high quality interior, high quality exterior, you're going to get rated low, you'll soon be out of business. So there's a strong incentive to give the best service you can and provide additional services that they wouldn't get to the hotels and motels, like where should we go today? Rental housing shortage crisis is not unique to Yarmouth, and it's getting worse. Why? Okay, skyrocketing construction costs. See the example of the electrician. Quoted a house to wire a house 3 years ago was $10,000. Last week it was up to $30,000. That's just for the electrical wiring for that bungalow. Residential Tenancy Board limits annual increases 2%. I can put my rents up 2%. Last year my taxes on average went up 18%, my property taxes. Year before that was 7 to 8%. And repair costs have doubled over the past few years. Oil has doubled, NSPC has increased rates, and unbelievably, the federal government in their wisdom has implemented an underused housing tax that's going to require me to fill out 6 pages for every apartment. I hope it's building, but it could be unit, to fill out and send to them. And if I fail to do one building or one unit, it's $10,000 fine for any buildings I don't complete those forms for. So if you add those things together, you're never going to have rental housing being built. Who wants to get involved with this industry? It's unaffordable, and you have to be able to ensure that you can get a market rent, and the market rents will not pay to build new apartment buildings in the town of Yarmouth. And I'm sure that the high school slowness is reflecting some of that. I don't know. I don't have any inside scoop on it. Maybe it's going to start tomorrow, but I'm assuming it isn't. And that's with, I think they had a 1.2 million in different government grants that were going into it. And that building's built. So those are the barriers, and those are the real issues about housing, and it's everywhere. It's not just Yarmouth. So I ask that if you start getting letters from renters in the town of Yarmouth saying, oh, there's too many Airbnbs, and I don't have a place to rent, that we're insignificant. We could triple, quadruple more and still not be impacting the 57% of rental units on the housing stock in Yarmouth. You got to wonder why. Why does Yarmouth have 57% rental units when the provincial average is 28%? Was my time up?
Oh, well,
Or did you want to ask me a question?
no, I was just going to answer.
So I'll let you wait for questions to the end.
I was going to.
I'm just teasing you.
God love you.
Okay, so build it and they will come. That's something that hasn't happened to our area. I mean, we have natural geography, beautiful geography, but we haven't had great, like in Sydney, they built a casino, so there was a reason to go, and they go do other things there. But we're doing better. We've got some things, some good attractions. Getting them off track. Yarmouth is one of the most beautiful towns in Nova Scotia. I've traveled over several countries and a lot of Canada. Can definitely say that we have the freshest seafood and the best seafood cooks, as well as great restaurants. We also have amazing beaches and beautiful lakes. Short-term rentals is a mundane and boring description of what travelers are seeking. Certain travelers are looking for unique, affordable adventures, as well as home comfort. The Airbnb platform caters to this type of traveler, discourage Airbnb operators, and lose a growing economic driver for the local area. The Airbnb guest is not looking for motels and hotels. They are seeking out unique experiences, and the town of Yarmouth should be encouraging this industry, not restricting it. After 5 years in Airbnb, I can say very few, if any, of my guests are people who would stay in motels or hotels. One retired school teacher stayed with me for 6 weeks and fell in love with Yarmouth and purchased a home in town. Another young couple used one of my units as a base in searching for a home in Nova Scotia. They eventually purchased a home in Mahone Bay, but spent a lot of money in Yarmouth during their search. I have had local fire insurance claimants, families stay that would have gone crazy in a motel. Travel nurses who want to cook their own food stay with me. Many are not motel types. If they're not comfortable, they won't come here. Short-term rentals, Airbnb guests bring more people to Yarmouth who spend more money that stay in Yarmouth. The Airbnb operation has afforded me to build 8 new buildings over 5 years in the town of Yarmouth and develop an otherwise unused area. I intend to keep developing. Yarmouth needs more short-term rental operators, not less. If you restrict, as Halifax has done, the town economy will be the loser. If a policy change doesn't make sense, then it should not be implemented, and this proposed restrictive change doesn't make any sense at all to me. Thank you.
Good stuff. So you're staying, right? You're staying?
Okay.
Not particularly in that seat, Jack.
For the after party?
For the after party.
Okay.
No, because after the public hearing, then it comes to council for discussion. We just don't want you to miss that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this? I'll ask 3 times. Would anyone else like to speak to this one? Would anyone else like to speak to this? Okay, hearing no one, we will move on to the second public hearing item, which is the microbrewery amendment and that council amend the land use bylaw to include micro distillery, microbrewery, micro wineries, and similar craft beverage production as permitted uses in the general commercial C2 zone. Would anyone like to speak to this one? By all means. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Mayor, and my name is Henok. I am health promoter with Public Health. I am here today to give some comments on the bylaw change. I'm also representing my colleagues at Public Health. I'm also a resident here in town, so I'm coming on both sides. I just want to say, and what I would like to address is communities with greater access to alcohol consumption have a greater harm to the communities because of alcohol-related harms. There is a lot of scientific evidence that shows that, and I have submitted a letter this afternoon. I'm not sure if you get it, but I've submitted a letter which has reference in it. And what we're suggesting is this is a good opportunity to have maybe setting a maximum threshold or a cap for the number, the type and location of alcohol licenses. So that would protect the health of the communities. And if we limit the access to alcohol, then we're protecting the health of the community. And Public Health is very willing to work with the town to do a health impact assessment of this kind of bylaws or anything related to anything related to policies to reduce harm that comes from alcohol. So we're here to just mention that, and I refer you to the letter that I submitted earlier this day, this afternoon.
Yeah. So everybody got a copy of that letter in the email? Yeah, we did.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm also a resident in town, and is it also okay if I just...
Oh, by all means.
This is my personal opinion on the short-term rental.
Go ahead.
So I personally think that we should protect the stock of the rental, the available rental apartments. So most municipalities are doing regulation, and then I think Yarmouth also should do some part of regulation to protect the stock. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this issue? regarding the microbrewery? I'll ask one more time. Would anybody else like to speak to this issue? Okay. Are we good? Did somebody put their hand up or just stretching down back? Did you see the hand? No? Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, folks, everyone, for coming and for sharing. Now we go to business arising. And 10A, so recommended motion there, Central Business District Improvement Plan bylaw, that council approve second reading to amend the Central District Improvement Bylaw Plan. Plan bylaw. Okay. Did you have to say anything to that?
The only thing I would say, just for council's information and reminder, I guess, is that this is the bylaw that allows us to do tax phase-in agreements in the Central Business District. And through our experience of using this bylaw over the past number of years, the recommendations were developed by staff to improve the administration effectively. And we've gone through first reading of this, and so tonight is the final reading of that bylaw. And just for information for those in attendance, because this isn't a land use bylaw amendment, it doesn't require a public hearing, but it did require public notification. So this was advertised in the paper so the public was aware, and they could submit information to the council if they had an opinion or a concern. We received no information from the public.
Okay. Okay, moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. 10B. 10B is the MPS and LUB. So the recommended motion there is that council approve second reading to amend the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to allow short-term rental accommodations within residential dwellings. I need a motion. Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, go ahead. I got
All right.
a whole page full of stuff. So you
Yeah,
go ahead.
I've been shifting uncomfortably in my seat because it's, I have a few things I'd like to say. First off, I'm hugely in favor of STRs, short-term rentals. I've spent my life working in tourism, and I understand the importance of them. A short-term rental, by definition, is just a definition between 28 days and less. And long-term is more than that. But to me, short-term rentals are more important than just that. They're not just a tourism mechanism. They're very important for things like doctor recruitment, like many other situations where short-term rentals are valuable. For clarity's sake, I don't believe there's anyone here to Amand who are looking to cut back on short-term rentals, as far as I know. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong and speak up, but what we were looking to do and what was necessary to do is to change the MPS, the municipal planning strategy, and the LUB, which is the land use bylaw, because to this point, STRs aren't even mentioned within our planning. And so we've gone through this in order for that. And we have had people who have very eloquently spoken in favor of STRs. And to be honest with you, I'm the chair of the planning committee. And when we first had our meeting with our public participation part, I expected that there would be a large amount of people in to speak against STRs, and that was not even remotely the case. Everybody who came in came to speak in favor of STRs. Now, since we went through that process and ended up at this point in this process, I have been talked to or had conversations with various people who are in and amongst the industry, the Airbnb industry specifically, but STRs in general. And I would like to make an amendment, and this is something that has been discussed. Aaron can probably address this as well, Aaron, our planner. But I would like to amend it because the way it's set up right now, for example, one of the groups who spoke here today, they have a development agreement in place. They have had it for years now. And because of the change that we're doing, would have to go through that process again. And to me, that's inherently unfair. And so what I'd like to do is amend the actual amendment to the LUB to increase the number of permitted short-term rental dwellings to 2 per lot, first off, and to remove the requirement of the STR host to have to live on the same lot. So I'd like to see that as an amendment to our motion and have that taken care of.
So can I just,
Yes,
they're not under development agreement. No,
that's right.
no one's under development agreement right now.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to, oh, okay,
That's what we're trying to do, is make sure that
Yes.
doesn't happen.
okay.
But by changing it, then you don't need that development agreement in order to have 2 on the lot, and whether or not a person is occupying that STR space. Okay, so they don't have to go through that development agreement again. Because as it's written right now, they would.
That- Heather?
Yes, there is. They've gone through a development agreement originally, years ago, in order to have what they have.
No, there's no development agreement. That's what I was,
I see. Okay, well, let's make it so they don't have to. And that's what I'm saying. So I would like to, I don't know if I can make that motion myself or invite that as a motion to amend it.
yeah, please.
So that's a material change to what is before council for second reading. So the motion would have to be to go back, restart the process. And to what degree, I guess I would defer to the solicitor or the planner, whether this, the amendments to the MPS would accommodate that change, or whether you'd have to go back and change the MPS as well, which requires consultation at the committee level. Aaron, am I getting that right?
Yeah, so for clarification, it wouldn't fit. It would no longer be, if you removed the requirement for the property to be used as a residence, a primary residence, you would no longer meet the existing policy of your MPS. Right now, the MPS is pretty specific, and it says that non-residential uses are to be accommodated only where the operator of the business resides on the property, because the intent there is really to keep it as a residential use versus a commercial use. And so there's the MPS as it existed right now wouldn't allow for the changes as proposed. You'd have to go back and change the MPS to a greater extent. And then just to clarify in terms of development agreement, the distinction there being once a development agreement is a contract for the use that happens on a property, it gets registered on the property title and it protects that use until such time as both the town and the property owner and subsequent owners, whoever owns it at the time, agree to discharge or amend. So just want to make the distinction that for a development agreement, you wouldn't, if you were issued one now, that would protect your use going forward. Only if you wanted to change the use, would you have to change the development agreement.
I'm sticking to it. If nobody wants to support it, that's fine, but.
We
So
just want to do it.
So you have a motion on the floor for the amendment as written. You have to deal with that motion. And if you wanted to, if council was of the opinion through your discussion that you wanted to refer the matter back to committee to consider the amendments you've outlined, then you can do that if council's in agreement.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a question too. I'm going to go to Councillor Heather because no, Councillor Lesser first and then, sorry.
I guess, do we have to make, does the motion have to be, do we have to have a motion second to then discuss it?
We've already, no, yeah, well, yes, we have a motion on the floor. And
We would need a second to discuss though, right?
this is part of the discussion. Unless you want to change, unless
It's a
we,
motion to amend, which
Yes.
hasn't had a seconder yet.
but
So
did he make the
somebody's-
motion? Did you
Well-
make the motion?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so yes, if you want, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, if it's seconded, then you have to vote on the amendment. And then you would, if it passes or doesn't pass, then you have to vote on the original motion.
Yes.
Or the amended motion.
We're gonna answer all the questions before we vote on anything. So if you want a second, well, no, I mean,
I guess that was my question is if we second it and it's something that can't be done, where does that put, like, can we discuss it without seconding it first?
No.
Because, okay,
you
I'll
need
second.
it- to discuss it, you need a motion on the floor.
Okay, I'll
That's how
second the motion.
Right. So you're seconding Counselor Cleveland's motion,
Yeah.
which was?
To amend the, I'm sorry, I guess I probably can't without a microphone anyway, but to amend it so that short-term rentals can have 2 per lot and that the owner does not have to live on the same lot.
Okay, so then my question on that, and going back to Aaron, is will that comply with provincial legislation? And I don't know if Aaron or the CAO, I mean, I would be in favor of that if it, for sure I would be if it complies with provincial regulations. And I agree with what Mr. Churchill said earlier. It is difficult when the province is dictating how these things are going to work in a small community. But that's what we live by right now, and we have to do that. So to follow the provincial legislation, would these motions changes allow for for us to comply?
Yes, through your worship. So the provincial legislation doesn't speak to how many you're allowed to have on your municipality or your lot. Your MPS kind of provides the guidance for that. The provincial legislation and regulations are really just saying that if you're going to do these uses, you need to register with the province. So that's kind of where that piece ends. The second piece related to number, you could have under the existing MPS framework as it is now, you could increase the number to 2 per lot. And that would be kind of compliant with the framework that's there. However, removing the requirement for the host to reside on the property, so whether that's the property owner or whether that's a long-term tenant who's renting out one of the units or operating one of the units on the property, that would require going back and making further changes to the MPS that you have now in place to allow that to happen. So two separate issues. One is the province is just asking that if you're doing these uses, any type of rental accommodation whatsoever, other than just renting a campground space with nothing on it, so people come in with their own tents or their own trailers, anything other than that, you have to register with the province, but they don't tell any municipalities what those short-term rental regulations need to be in terms of number, where they're permitted, what zones they're permitted, the number that they're permitted, or any other criteria. It's just simply that you have to register with them.
Yeah. Okay. Did you second his motion? Oh, thank you. Okay, Councillor Heather.
Thank you. I don't know, my comment is not in regards to Councillor Cleveland's motion, but it is a question on the issue, I guess. So I'm a little confused as to where we are to speak at this point. But I guess my question is what was the original thought and intent that went into what we were looking at here tonight? So, you know, what was the basis of the one person living on the property and that? So where did that come from and what was the intent behind that? I know what the intent is, but what was the thought? What was the...
Go ahead. I think I know from my perspective, but go ahead, Aaron.
Yes, thank you, through your chair. So in looking at this, as I said, it was really driven by the fact that the province had made these changes, and in order for people to come in and be able to get compliance letters to work with kind of within the existing confines of what your MPS says right now, and that is that's the stuff related to, you know, residential uses are separate from commercial uses. So if you're no longer using the property for a permanent resident, you're allowing the entire property to be rented out on a nightly or short-term basis, and it is a commercial use. So you're now expanding commercial uses through residential areas, which your current MPS doesn't allow for. So it was really looking at how do we allow people to do this within the confines of what is allowed now, recognizing that this is a big issue, and as we've heard from many speakers, short-term rentals affect so many things. They offer unique housing considerations, as we've heard, in terms of, people that are here in the community for long terms. Flexible leases, so you're not negotiating, you're negotiating owner to owner, things like renting to students part-time, and then in the summer, having an offer tourist accommodation increases the tourist capacity. And like people have said, different tourists have different wants and needs, and it kind of fills the gap for some of them. But that there is also, and it has been demonstrated in the studies that have been recently done, that it does have an impact on rental housing. So the thought here was really, the town's going to be going through a large MPS and LUB review. And as part of that, you'd be looking at housing data, housing needs assessment, economic development, tourism, and you'd be having these really broad community conversations. And so out of that, at that time, would be a greater opportunity to get more people involved and really find a tailored solution for the town going forward. Whereas proposed now is really just more of a, how do we get something in place in the short term, recognizing that we don't have the housing pieces. So even as Mr. Churchill was saying, recognizing there are a lot of rental households in Yarmouth. We don't know the extent of what that looks like right now. There is no housing needs assessment in place to kind of weigh out, what will the impact be if we just allowed up to 2 units, which for most of the residential properties in Yarmouth would be the entire property. So it's kind of trying to find a balance that would work in the short time. So get the process started. Just to be clear, you can still do, as being proposed, it allows 1 per lot. It could be increased to 2 under the existing permitting, but the property residency, either by the host or by the property owner themselves, would have to change the MPS as it goes forward. Just wanted to step back though in looking at this. So going back to the report, it really is like twofold. So we know that people are doing this. We know that all the positive impacts. We know that there are potential impacts. We just don't have enough information really to say what the impact would be. So that's really where we're looking at having these broader community conversations as part of that MPS review. That's kind of the main drive, is just to get something in place now to allow the folks to do, and to recognize that, the 1 per lot and where the residence is, the host is on the property, does allow for quite a lot of the existing short-term rentals to continue to operate there where there are. And then just layering the secondary piece, allowing for a development agreement, increasing it to more than 1, or removing the restriction of the owner-operator, allows council to do it on a case-by-case basis. It's the only way to consider these uses on a case-by-case basis would be through that development agreement. The other way is, so what the new motion is, as of right, would, as I said, would apply to any property. So you just come in, but you meet those 2, really, which would be 1 requirement. You just, as long as you're less than 2 units, you would be given a development permit to go. Whereas the development agreement allows for council to consider things like, is there a cluster? Are there 2 or 3 already on that block? How do the neighbors think about the impact of this issue? Is it safe for the intended use of the property for a short-term commercial type style accommodation? Also to look at potential impact to the housing stock. So is this the conversion of a apartment building? Is this the 3rd or 4th or 5th one that we've seen? So it just allows, the development agreement just allows council to have that case-by-case basis and a little bit of the monitoring of it in the short term before you have the broader community conversation, which may in fact open it up wider or impose different restrictions or an entirely different approach, just recognizing that, the short-term rentals do touch on so many different aspects.
Does that help?
So, yeah, I guess it comes down to residential versus commercial.
Exactly, that's
And
what-
so for a development agreement, how long does that take to go through that process? If it's, if the folks have to do that, like what kind of encumbrance is that for folks to have to do that? How quickly can that be done to accommodate their needs?
Yeah, so right now, the way development agreements are typically run, it's about a 6-week process. The process itself is someone would make an application, staff would review it against the guiding policy. So those are the policy, say if this was to go through, those would be the policy criteria that are before you in the package tonight, which is the things I was just speaking to in terms of impact to housing, safety of the proposed use, impact on neighborhood, those sorts of issues. They would make a recommendation and draft the development agreement. Development agreement, as I mentioned earlier, is a contract which gets registered on the property title. So you draft that development agreement, that would go to PAC for comment and recommendation to council. Then it moves into the council process. Council would give it initial consideration. There would be a public hearing. And then following public hearing, if council was supportive of that and approved it, then there would be a right to appeal for 14 days. And if there was no appeals are registered, or when the appeal was resolved, you could then register the property agreement on title. So best case scenario, it is about probably, if it depends, 3-month process, I would say is probably fairly average. Again, it kind of depends on frequency of council meetings, the upfront back and forth with the applicant, if the information's all there. There's different things like that, but you're probably looking at about 3 months on average.
Okay, and as one of the speakers, Mrs. Wetmore, asked about grandfathering in those that are presently established, and so is that an option?
No, through the chair. Grandfathering isn't an option because it's not on use that's allowed now. So grandfathering really refers to if you could do something on the property already and then the rules were changed, it protects the use that was there existing. And there are protections built into the NGA that does protect, they're called existing non-conforming uses in that sense. Because this use isn't actually currently allowed, as I mentioned earlier, dwelling right now specifically says shall not be used as hotel motel. Hotel motel is, of course, defined as anything to the traveling public. There is no established permitted use right now for short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you.
So they wouldn't, in fact, be able to be grandfathered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dayers?
Thank you. So to begin with, I don't think there's anybody sitting at this table, at least in the discussions I've had, that wants to discourage the short-term rental landscape here. But I'm just wondering, before we go too far on this, would not the development agreement in some manner protect the integrity of the short-term rentals? I guess I'm thinking it might afford some protection to those property owners who provide a quality service and quality accommodations at this present time. If you don't have the development agreement in place and there's no requirement for the owner to live on the property, are we opening it up to, I guess, lower standards? And that's my concern, is that I don't mean to impose an onus on, make it a difficult process for those that want to have a property with more than one unit and not have to live on the property. But I'm just wondering if you can guarantee the quality of the standards of high quality that you want to see, and I would think most of the people providing short-term rentals would like to protect. I'm just wondering if that might be in jeopardy if there wasn't a development agreement. Anyway, that's just my comment.
Councillor Bell?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. So I really appreciate the presentations that we've had tonight. They've really helped me understand from your perspective what the concerns are. We're talking about the amendment on the floor here right now with regards to increasing the number of units. I could be convinced that that might be an acceptable compromise, but I am opposed to removing the resident requirement. And the reason that I'm opposed to it is that if you take that off, it changes the residential nature of the community. And what it opens up is the possibility of investment, businesses based in Toronto, based in Halifax, based anywhere, coming in and buying up properties here and basically creating motel units on properties. They are not here, not present. They are, and we know that it happens. And I do not want to see happen in this community what has happened, what I have witnessed happening in other small coastal communities throughout Nova Scotia, where, you have clusters of properties that are bought up by investment people for investment and turned into short-term rental, not available for community use and only used for 2 or 3, 4 months of the year and then standing empty most of the rest of the year. And it is a blight on neighborhoods if it's not controlled. So the development agreement provides me with the confidence that we can still protect our residents at the same time that we're helping to build the tourism industry. So I think that's where, and one thing I would like to have clarity about, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind, the bylaw says that the owner has to, that the primary residence has to be owner occupied, but it's my understanding that doesn't mean the owner has to actually live full-time in the building. I think it means that it has to be sort of a primary address where their water bill, their electric bill, their sewer bill goes. Is that, am I right about that?
Yes, so primary residence is exactly that. So it is your general place of residence, the place that when you get your driver's license, what is recorded. When you get your healthcare card, that's the address that's recorded. So it's where you spend most of your time. The way the bylaw is written, it doesn't have to be the property owner's place of residence, but whoever's operating the host as the host on the property, that has to be their primary place of residence. It does also allow for the primary resident to rent out their property without them being there. Like if they were to go away for a month and they wanted to rent out their house, their own primary residence for that month, they could do so. It's just keeping the use of the short-term rental attached to somebody residing on that lot on a regular basis.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I just jotted down notes and they're all over my page. I use Airbnbs all over the world. Like I'm not, like Jack said, I'm not a hotel person. I'm an Airbnb. I want that experience, that local experience wherever I go. I did want to say our population is up over 7,000. It was hard not to say that while you were talking. It's up over 7,000 in the last 4 years alone, up over 5%, almost 5%. That's hundreds more coming in. We're finding that some of them are retired folks. Some of them are coming in because they're frankly tired of the big city life, and the quality of life here is off the charts. We all know that. And we're getting a ton of young families, which just excites us to no end, except when they build the school too small, but we'll have to deal with that. So I just want to put you at ease that Mama's on it. Yeah, we want our population to go up. I just have to find my notes and figure out what I need to say. I'm going to say some stuff that's probably political suicide, but it's not like I haven't done it before. You know, we need Airbnbs. There's no question. I think everybody at the table fully understands that, and the intention was, there was zero intention, I think, from no one. There was no intention to halt that. But in a nutshell, the province says you have to be registered. Now I'm going to say something else to that, because, you know, why do you need to register? And then I'm going to pick on Jack all night. So then Jack said, you know, this is our level of income in the town. The reason and that is true completely across the country. It's critical mass in a town. So if people don't have extra funds, then they congregate inside the town limits because they don't have access to things like transportation. They need to be able to walk to work, like all those things. And then you know, the question was asked, how did all this, you know, rental housing get in town? Well, there was this mayor back in the 60s and 70s. His name was Mr. Eamon or something like that. My dear grandfather brought in the first social housing outside of Halifax, and he brought it to Yarmouth. We now have the largest, and we have for years and years and years, per capita, by far, the largest amount of social housing inside of town per capita, across the board. I'm going to lose my train of thought. The registration piece, if I were sitting in a provincial office or a federal office, and it goes hand in hand with the amount of money that people make, there are so many ways in a fishing community, in rural Nova Scotia, and everybody will understand this. There are so many ways to not pay taxes, to not claim income. And if you're making the money in a commercial way, you need to pay the taxes, because that's what gives you roads and street lights and, water and sewer from 2 different sources if you're very lucky. So we have to pay taxes, and we have to be able to, hold people accountable to do that. So when you're not, when you have guests in your home and you're not claiming that, which people are, I know that, but not everybody was, it cuts down on the amount of money that we have as a province, as a country, as a town to make the things happen for people. Like that's just basic common sense, I think. I'm going to say this as well. The tenancy board, I'll tell you one of the reasons I'm a fan of Airbnbs, aside from all the regular reasons. The tenancy board, I find, protects the tenants. I would say almost solely. They don't protect the landlords to the degree that they need to. So how do you, as business owners, and I'm not talking about Airbnb, I'm talking about rentals, how do you, as a person that owns rentals in this town or any other town, how do you go into some of these properties and take the very, not much, some people would say rental prices are out of control. They're not. They're not really out of control. I think they're just coming up to market rate, but and that's sad because a lot of people just can't afford that. But how do you take that $1,200 or $1,000 a month and pay for the $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 worth of damage that's been done by the tenants? You can't do it. And I don't think, man, I'm going to get in trouble. I don't think it's up to an Airbnb owner to play the part of a long-term landlord. It's a business. This is the business that you choose. Any more than it's up to Boston Pizza or any other restaurant to have to change to provide lower food prices for people that can't afford a restaurant. Am I making sense? Like, I hope I'm making sense. It's really, these are the difficult conversations, but somebody has to say it. Yeah, so in any case, we've got a lot of things to fix when it comes to housing. I've said it before, I've said it on the radio, I've said it in the paper. We need to look after the regular housing that we have, and I'm not talking just about the landlords, I'm talking about the tenants as well. And then there's no question about the Airbnbs and where they are. And frankly, and again, because we've been saying, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no complaints about Airbnbs here that I've ever heard. If somebody has, let me know, but we don't. You can't get somebody to come into your Airbnb and then come back if it's dumb. It has to be kept up to par. It has to look good on the outside. It has to be clean. Your sheets have to be clean. Like everything, top to bottom, has to be, if you want to bring your guests back. So I wish that were the case with with every rental unit. If I had my way, I'd make every landlord, fix everything, and I'd hold every tenant accountable for the mess that they make that causes people to say the only way I'm going to make money is if I do something that will, every day there's a turnover or every week there's a turnover. So I don't know if I answered any questions, except that the population's gone up. Jack's happy. Right, Jack?
Yes.
That's a good thing. Yeah, we just, and provincially, we just, it upsets me. I know that our income is low. The further out you go, the higher the income is, because they can afford transportation and things to get into town. So we know that in every single town across this province and across Canada, the incomes are lower. And the other piece is I want to call it the underground economy. It's really easy here to work under the table and not claim everything you make and make it look like folks are making less money in general. And the other piece to that is a lot of people are not making enough to even make ends meet, which is really, really sad. So there has to be a happy medium. But all that to say, I'll do whatever. I completely understand the commercial aspect, because you can't just have commercial in the middle of residential, but how do you do that to move forward and see if we can fix something later? Because I agreed with Councillor Cleveland, I don't think the people need to live there, but then you're creating something else. And I will say this as well, while I'm on a roll, Jack, I think that was part of the issue in Halifax, in some of the older neighborhoods that were established and, sort of like you see in New York City when you watch the movies and people are sitting out on their stoops and they know their neighbors, and then all of a sudden they've got a pile of people change over every day, and it just changed everything for them, and the parties and the noise and the lack of respect for that quiet neighborhood. And I know that in one particular area, at least, that was the case, because I talked to the councillor there just to get a heads up. But you're right, there's many reasons, but that was one of them. So, yeah, I don't. The other one was the grandfather. Can we talk about that thing right there?
You can talk about whatever you want.
Did you hear that? Talk about whatever I want. We were just, I was talking to the CAO earlier, and the development, I know the development agreement is a bother. I just would love to have the development agreement. I think it needs to be in place, because right now we have a bunch of places that are not, I don't want to say legal or however you want to do it, but it's going to be status quo until anything happens, right? Like nothing's going to happen until we're good, right? Status, that's okay. Status quo on, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to shut anything down in the meantime until we figure out what we're doing, right?
Right. So this is second reading on the bylaw.
Yeah.
If the bylaw were to pass tonight, as was introduced, obviously there are a number of operators who we know are out there. We can go on the website and see the Airbnbs, but we also know that many of them would require a development agreement, and so we would expect some applications and process them as expediently as possible. Your Worship, you said it, and I think others have said it, and that we've had no complaints. Right? The issue that is experienced in Mahone Bay, the issue that is experienced in Halifax, is not the same issue that we have in Yarmouth. But the reason it's been introduced with a fairly restrictive as of right provision is that this is not a comprehensive review of our land use bylaw. That is coming. That's in the budget. We're going to start that this year. That will allow us to take a good hard look at this. This is an attempt to do something fairly quickly to allow you as operators of properties to become in compliance. And so it's fairly restrictive, but the development agreement opportunity provides you the opportunity to get in compliance and that can be grandfathered. So we do a comprehensive review, and maybe the rules come out in such a way that you wouldn't comply under the new rules. Doesn't matter, you're grandfathered, you have your development agreement, okay? So this is protecting you in the long term by doing a short-term fix without opening up the community to a large risk. So if we said 2 units and you don't have to live there, virtually all the residential property in town could be eligible. And you might see, as we do a comprehensive review, a lot of people, you could see investment, but you could also see a lot of people try to get a peg in it to say, okay, I'm applying for a development agreement to do Airbnb because they fear they would lose that right. And so then you have a whole bunch of grandfathered Airbnbs that maybe you wouldn't have had and could end up causing a problem in the community because of the density or the clustering. So this is a chance for council to allow what is going on in the community, to look at every one of them on a case-by-case basis. And again, there have been no complaints. I don't see any reason why any of those that are existing wouldn't be able to get a development agreement to do exactly what they're doing. But for anybody new who comes in, it would allow council and the committee to look at it and make sure that it's not creating a cluster of short-term rental properties on one street or in one area, or that if we do start to get complaints, we can kind of throttle back a little bit or add extra conditions on the new ones, not on the ones that are already approved. So, Your Worship, we talked about the idea of development agreements. I know that people don't like that because maybe, I don't know. I don't know why people don't like that, but I'm going to guess that it has to do with time, process, and we know that looks like about 3 months. Risk that it wouldn't get approved or that you'd have extra hoops to jump through. I don't think that's anybody's intention. And there's a cost. And so, we could look at a situation, and staff, I think, would be supportive of a situation where any existing short-term rentals that we're applying for development agreements to be in compliance with the new bylaw, that we would have a fees policy that would look after all or a part of the fee that you would be charged to do the development agreement process.
Just for the existing.
Right. So if we had a groundswell of applications and they don't currently exist on any of the platforms, then we would say, okay, that's not an existing, that's a new application and the regular fees would apply. But if you're already existing, you're not creating a problem in the community, we're trying to just help you come into compliance and manage risk in the community. I don't see, we're not talking about a lot of money in the big picture of the town, but it is a pain it's a pain somewhere for people who have to reach in their own pocket and pay those extra few $100s. So I think we could talk about that as a way to relieve some of that pain.
Go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
I guess my fear was earlier about seconding the motion is that along the process, we might come up with something better. And if we have to go back to the beginning, when there's something on the table that we could, like I like the idea of waiving fees or lowering fees. But a couple things I do want to say is that you talked about, Your Worship, people living in town that can afford to live in town, and there are people who can't afford to live out of town because of vehicles and price of gas and all that. And I tried, with my kids, I tried to get all 3 to buy in town. One did, and the other 2 said there's no way. Not that they don't like town, but they wanted the country life. It bothers me when I see the price of gas at one point getting up to like $2.50. I felt like calling them and saying, I told you. But they have a quality of life that they enjoy. My daughter that lives in town has a quality of life that she enjoys. But it is very difficult to kind of force people in that direction. And then I just want to clarify with talking about provincial and federal partners and them dictating, that's not a slight on them at all. I was thinking more along the lines of what I originally thought this was, with restrictions of 1 per property and 1 either landlord living on site. And I thought it was that narrowed in, and I thought, to me, that seems too restrictive for every community. But given the fact that the province is saying they need to register to be on the list, I don't have any problem with that. And I'm not trying to bash our provincial and federal partners at all. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying anything negative about the, it's our provincial government that implemented this, but I mean, somebody needs to keep control of who's doing what, so. Okay, so we have, right now, we've got an amendment motion. Go ahead.
All right, so you talked about going through the process, expediting it as much as possible, and perhaps waiving those fees. I'd be more than willing to drop my amendment if that were the case, but how do we put that upon public record so that that's taken care of?
We just vote against it.
No, that's not what I'm
Oh,
asking.
you don't want that?
You're asking about the expedited process and dropping of fees?
Yeah.
So the expedited process is a matter of, right now, as Aaron is sitting here as our contract planner, that's the resource that we rely on to help us through these processes. And knowing that there are a number of them coming, I think she and her colleagues would assist us to try and expedite those as quickly as possible. People have to apply and we have to look at their situations individually. But again, we can commit to expediting to the extent our resources permit. The fees is in a separate policy. A policy requires 7 days notice, clear days notice to council to enact. We have a council meeting coming up in 3 weeks. So if you want to consider that, you know our process, you ask for it to be on the agenda, you introduce your motion, it comes out, and if it's passed at that meeting, then under the conditions that we discussed here, or I proposed, then that becomes our policy.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so where are we?
I'm thinking. Yeah, okay. I'll walk back the amendment and we can move forward that way if that's the case.
Because we have the opportunity to revisit this with the bigger picture.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
what would you like us to do, solicitor?
So no one seconded the motion, so.
Well,
yes or
yeah,
no?
he did, because I made him.
Okay, so you should have a vote to defeat the motion, and then you can vote on the original motion, I would suggest.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor.
Just going on that, looking at some of the issues that were presented tonight, by doing this and people getting their agreement in place, and then change is made that, they can move to 2 units, that's the piece that will allow for those, like when we make those changes after, we're not restricting ourselves by voting on this, correct?
So as I indicated, what you're doing is you're providing protection for, as those agreements are approved, each one provides the property owner with protection that they can do what is in that agreement going forward, as long as they continue to do that, as long as that agreement exists. Doesn't matter if you change your bylaw, you approve that and that remains. And so that is the grandfathering protection that you provide to each of those property owners through the process.
Jeff, that doesn't require, if you're not living in the house now, then you don't have to live in the house. You don't have to follow that
That's right. So a development agreement is a completely, it's a specific set of rules.
Customized to that building.
Right. And so if you have a 4-unit and you're not living there and you're Airbnb-ing all 4 units, and that you get as a right through your development agreement,
Okay.
then you maintain that going forward.
I understand.
Just want to make sure everybody's okay, that we understand what we're voting on. Okay?
And first.
Okay, so on the amendment, all those in favor?
Aye, just because I'm stubborn.
Put that in the minutes. Okay? Any nays? Nay. Okay, motion the amendment's defeated. But you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay? And on the main motion, is there any more discussion there? And the CAO made it clear that this is not, Harry doesn't have to move in anywhere.
It's a nice place, man.
It's a nice place.
I always want to go down and stay one night, but we never have the time that we can do it. They're not open, it's busy.
That's good news. Okay, so on the amendment, all those in favor? Or no, not on the amendment, on the main motion.
Yeah, on the main
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Phew. That was, thank you so much, all of you who came and who spoke. Jack, for your 20 minutes, that was wonderful. Yes. But it was all good, it was all good, and Carol, thank you. We really appreciate you coming in, and it's all good.
So, I just want to clarify with Erin while we have her here and folks are here. So now what's the process from here, Erin, before this becomes effective?
Yes, the chair. So the process here, if council just adopts the proposed amendments tonight, it would have to be sent to the ministry for review. Typically the ministry responds they look at what's presented, they look at it, can compare it to the statements of interest. So in this case, they'd be looking at what you're proposing in comparison to their provincial statement on housing. If they don't see any issues or conflict with that, then it's usually about a 30-day turnaround saying, we have no issues, proceed. And then the town would have to put a notice in the paper that says that this approval has been made, these have been adopted, and at that point when it's in the paper, it's effective. And only once it's effective could you then enter into development agreements.
Right, okay, so that's just to say that we're probably looking at about 6 weeks before we can receive applications, assuming this all checks all the boxes. We're looking at about 6 weeks before we can begin taking applications for development agreements.
I think there's a slight distinction there. So you could, noticing that if this is the motion that council has, this is what's adopted, you could receive applications now. They could probably go as far as PAC. They just couldn't get into the formal council process and hold public hearings on them. And so you could basically get the ball rolling and get partway through the process, but until they're in effect, you couldn't actually hold a public hearing on them or enter into an agreement and register on property title.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. So then what I would do if I owned a property and I was Airbnb and under this new bylaw proposed that I was going to have to enter a development agreement, I might wait 3 weeks and see if it's actually going to cost me any money.
Wait 3 weeks?
Yeah, so as Councillor Cleveland indicated, he's willing to, I think he's indicated he's willing to consider and propose that we waive the development agreement fees for existing operators. And so that comes up at the July
14th or 15th.
July 14th or 15th council meeting. So then staff has it clear what to do.
We'll make sure it's on the agenda. Right, Dorothy?
Okay. All right, so we're good? You're welcome. Okay. Business arising 10C, land use bylaw amendment. The recommended motion there is that council approves second reading to amend the land use bylaw to include micro distillery, micro brewery, micro wineries, and similar craft beverage production as permitted uses in the general commercial C2 zone.
Declare conflict, I think, on this one.
Okay?
Motion.
Okay. Second, moved and seconded. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, did you want to talk? Gil?
Oh, so go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just given the comments that were made by a speaker earlier in the evening, in this particular case, it's not increasing the number of alcohol or establishments that serve alcohol. It's only allowing a microbrewery within an existing facility. And I think the other part of his comments in regards to limiting the number of establishments that can serve liquor is something to look at another time, but it has no effect on this particular motion, I wouldn't believe.
They already serve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that okay? You understand that? Yeah, they already serve alcohol and, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just wanted to refer to the letter that was received from, is it Hanek? Yes, from Mr. Mary, and to suggest that we forward this to the Planning Advisory Committee for them to consider when we do our MPS and LUB planning strategy review.
Sure.
That would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so
Worship.
we can, yeah, go ahead.
So, Your Worship, that both of those thoughts are exactly what I had in my mind a second ago. And I think, public health is offered to engage in the MPS LUB. I think when we do the comprehensive review, we can definitely benefit from their advice and their perspective on matters such as this. So it was nice to see. We haven't always seen that kind of feedback or contribution for public health.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so are we ready for the vote? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the operational budget. So the recommended motion there, and I'm going to I'll go through the whole thing so that we've got everything in one motion. The recommended motion is that council accept a budget with revenues in the amount of $20,014,784 and expenses of $19,999,784 for a surplus of $15,000 for its general operations for the year ended March 31st, 2024, which provides for the following rates. Residential is $1.69 per 100 of assessment. Commercial is $4.31 per 100 of assessment. Resource General, $1.69 per 100 of assessment. Farmland is $2.16 per acre. So for anybody wondering if there was an increase or decrease, there was not. We didn't have to put the taxes up, which we were thrilled with. Garbage collection and processing, residential is $205 per dwelling unit, up to a maximum of 4 dwelling units per building. Others in excess of 4 dwelling units is deemed commercial and at the owner's expense. Retail and other commercial type operators are deemed commercial and at the owner's expense as well. The pollution control charges, that is sewer, quarterly base rate of 5/8 inch is $36.51. 3/4 inch is $54.77. The 1 inch is $91.29. 1.5 inches, $182.57. 2 inches, $292.11. 3 inches, $584.23. 4 inches, $912.85. 6 inches is $1,825.70. And 8 inches is $3,286.27. The effluent rate is $4.617 per 1,000 imperial gallons. The interest rate will be at a rate of 14% per annum charged on delinquent accounts. When did that change? We changed that last year? Yeah, that was different during COVID, but that's changed back. Depreciation, that council approves a transfer to the capital fund in the amount of $1,950,000. Our depreciation is, we fund that every year to just about that amount, almost $2 million every year. And the way I explain that in plain English so that I understand it is basically, when our parents were growing up, or when our parents had their families and they bought a new refrigerator or a stove or a Chesterfield that we used to call it, things like that, they would start saving right away to make sure that they could get the next one. So instead of borrowing money, we put money aside, to take care of infrastructure and those types of things. The Chief Administrative Officer will implement the inherent recommendations, administer and control the operating budget, and report to council as appropriate. So that is the motion. Moved by Councillor Lesser, second by Councillor Dares. Any discussion on the budget motion? Go ahead, Deputy.
Just to thank you to Jerry and all the work goes into doing this.
Whoops. Two lights came on.
I'm good?
Yeah, you're good, and then
Okay.
Val.
Just a big thank you to Jerry for presenting this to us in a way that we can all understand it, making it very easy. I appreciate that every year. Thankful that taxes didn't go up this year as well. And a lot of time is put into this, and it's not very easy to do, but we're here, as you can see, almost $20 million, so happy to approve that tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Your
Sorry
Worship.
about that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to point out that that our budget has increased. So our budget has increased. We are paying for it at the same tax rate because our assessment has increased as well. But the only way that an assessment increase does not result in a tax increase is if it's new build. And I think last year it was 3.1% of the assessment was new assessment. Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's really important that people understand that the tax rate and the amount of taxes that the bill that comes in the mail, the tax bill that comes in the mail, are not related. It's how much money we spend. That's what determines how much the tax bill is going to be. And for most of us, it's probably going to go up a little bit this year because everything has gone up. We know how much inflation has eaten into our capacity to spend money. So I just think it's really important that we acknowledge that. The tax rate hasn't gone up, but our taxes probably will go up. Thank you, Your Worship.
I think assessments went up, which is why we have more money. So when your assessment goes up, you pay more taxes, but you're paying them at the same rate as we did. Yeah. Okay, anything else on the budget?
Your Worship.
Go ahead, CAO.
Your Worship, I think it's worth mentioning, and it wasn't on the rate sheet, but Your Worship, as of the next time that we sit down as a council together, the town of Yarmouth will have zero debt. We've invested over the last 15 years. I think the number is north of $50 million in our infrastructure, and we've done that through the fiscal policies that you talked about or alluded to, by funding our depreciation out of our current year taxes and not using debt to maintain our infrastructure. That pays dividends to the taxpayer today when interest rates are on the rise. We're not refinancing debt for infrastructure that we either put on the ground or above the ground. So that's a policy that we're pretty happy to see this milestone reached. It doesn't mean we'll be debt free forever. It means that we have lots of fiscal capacity to meet the needs of the residents going forward.
Sometimes when I hear that, it's really exciting. You're very calm about it, but it's really, really exciting for a municipal unit, a town, to be debt free. And you're right, it might not be forever, but at least we've got that power. So it's really good, really exciting. Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Just on that note, CAO, I'm just wondering if you have any idea how many communities in the province of Nova Scotia could make that boast.
So I don't know how many. I know that we are the 5th largest town in the province, and none of the larger towns or cities could make that claim to not have debt. Okay.
It is a big deal. Okay, did we vote? Okay. Are we good? Any more questions, concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the 10E, the bylaw under Road Trail Act, the recommended motion there is that council proceed to first reading of the proposed bylaw under the Road Trails Act, which would make only Water Street a designated road trail. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I have a question too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question with two questions, actually. The first one is the bylaw that we are considering is basically a mirror of provincial legislation. Okay. And the second question is, are we going to define Water Street, or are we saying right to Vancouver Street, that we're going to allow access right to Vancouver?
So the recommendation is the entirety of Water Street, right to Vancouver. And the reason for that is it's an easily discernible boundary, and it also provides access for those visitors to get to another restaurant or two, actually a couple restaurants. If you, considering the alternative might have been to end it where the trail meets the street, just this side of Novatech Braids. If you continue up Water Street, there are a couple of restaurants there. You can get a lot closer to a service station. So, and again, you have that easily identifiable boundary. So that was the thinking behind that.
But that does not mean that they have egress onto Vancouver from there. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Go ahead, Deputy.
Just more of a comment. The ability to get a gas station, I guess, was brought up during the public meeting, and the people I've talked to were, somewhat concerned that if it was just Water Street. But I mean, you could park and it is very close, but it is something I guess we could see over the next little bit if we wanted to add to it or not. But I just think that's something that's important, to see the gas station, the pump, if you ever had a flat tire or anything, but just something to consider to add in there, I guess. But I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I will be as well, and I agree what the Deputy Mayor said. But I did want to just emphasize the fact that this is a great first step, and that we can kind of build on this from there. Perhaps there are other venues that can open up. Just because we're doing this now and making it Water Street exclusively doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. It just means that this is where it's going to be for now. And so, yeah, I certainly support that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And just on that note, for convenience of the traveling public, I wonder if there's any surplus lands, and what I mean by surplus is that probably aren't going to be developed in the near future, that the town owns that could be designated parking for ATVs.
Yeah, we have some properties on Water Street. We could designate. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the map, to be honest. But we certainly do have some. You could designate them as ATV parking without any improvement other than signage. They're gravel. Maybe a little bit of trimming up. But ATVs will be able to also park in the parking lots that exist on Water Street, at the wharves, and also at the curbside.
So we will we'll be chatting with the ATV Association. We've got a lot of work to do in the meantime. Did you want to elaborate on that? Because we've got a ton of work.
So, Your Worship, as the memo kind of indicates, there's a whole signage and identification process that has to take place in terms of, our traffic authority has to go down Water Street if that's the direction we go, and identify the signage needs, get those ordered, get those installed. We also have the fact that the ATV Association is a significant stakeholder in the success of this. And let me be perfectly clear. I suspect that if a council goes ahead and approves and allows this authority, and it goes south, If it goes badly, a council could also revoke that and would be unlikely in any hurry to bring it back. And so the necessity of being ready in terms of educating the ATV riders and the general public to expect to see ATVs on Water Street, that's really important. And so we have to meet with them and we have to figure out a communication strategy. And when we think it's time, then it's time and not before. So if first reading passes tonight, I am suggesting we not bring it back in July for second reading. Consider bringing it back in August if we anticipate that we would be ready on that timetable. So I'm just flagging that for you because we're not unaware that there's a lot of work to be done, but we need to have a clear indication of what council wants to do before we can kind of get that work in progress. In other words, we can't order signs until we have a pretty clear indication of where this is going.
Councillor Lesser?
Yeah, just, I guess, talking about, about having, so we're going to put, so signage will be on Water Street if this goes ahead. And until the signage is up, there would be no, there should be no ATVs on the road. So for the public that may not be in favor of this, I actually learned a lot at our public hearing. So much I learned that I'm going to get rid of my own ATV because I realized that maybe I'm not doing everything I should be doing, and I don't want to go through the process. So this entire process will mean that safe drivers with insurance, properly inspected bikes, and all that will be on the road. It's not going to be like what we see now on roads illegally. Sometimes are those that will never be able to ride on those trails. So I was enlightened a lot by that public hearing. As well, just to acknowledge that they did bring up environmental, and that it would, we'd be using more gas in a time of possible climate change and those type of things. I went home and thought about that as well. And if they turn around basically by my house, which is the end of the trail, and go back the other way as opposed to going down Water Street and connecting, they're still going to be using the gas. So although I recognize that, and I'm a huge fan of the environment, I don't see that being. I don't think this is going to increase the amount of gas being used. So just wanted to make those couple points.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Just a quick question to the CAO. So because this will be the question that'll be asked tomorrow is, reasonably, when can we expect that Water Street would be open to this kind of traffic? And like if you project it down the road? Because some people are thinking that after tonight.
I think they thought that last month when we
Yeah,
started
exactly.
discussing it.
And that's why I'd like to.
Well, I'm going to give you a not before, because I can't anticipate if there will be delays in delivery of signs and whatnot, but I'm going to say not before Labor Day weekend.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to reiterate that we are acting on the information that we received at the public hearing. It was a fulsome debate that brought a variety of viewpoints to the table. But I think one of the overarching directions that we were given was to proceed with caution and to use this as a trial and, dip our feet in and assess, and then maybe look at expanding the options. But caution was the watchword. So I just wanted to point out that we heard what the public said to us. Thank you.
So to that point, I had written down trial and I circled it. Is that something that we wanted to put in here, or we're just going to let it go? Yeah.
So, Your Worship, my thought on, and I did think about that as I was writing my memo, and I think it's difficult to put a time frame on what that trial period might be. If things are you know your bylaw is going to be reviewed in 4 years, because that's the cycle that we do our bylaw review. I don't see us doing it necessarily in 1 year. 1 year from Labor Day becomes a very kind of awkward time to be doing that.
Yeah.
But it could be later that fall. So it could be a little over a year that you look at it. But I honestly believe that if let's say Labor Day is the date, you'll be assessing it from that date forward. And if we have issues, I'm sure that we'll be talking about them.
Okay, that's fair. And that's really important for the communications piece, which we can talk about at a later time, but folks need to know. We don't sign on the dotted line and then it's done forever. And it's a shame. I just hope the few don't ruin it for the many, but, Deputy?
I just wanted to say the Labor Day weekend is not us dragging our feet. It's the process that's in place. We have to go through these public hearings, whatnot. It goes to the province for approval. So just to anyone out there listening, if we could do it quickly, we would, but we want to do it right. And the process that are in place just makes it that September is probably the earliest date if so.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to just say that although there's no time stated formally in the bylaw, that the bylaw does speak to it being a trial basis, and that it would be a trial. So I thought there's no time on it.
Thank you for that. I didn't know if it should go in the motion but if it's already in that. Go ahead, CAO.
So I just to add the importance of what I think is the importance of doing this right, is that this is new legislation in the province, and we might be first out of the gate in terms of implementing. And this council may be aware, I think you're aware through the memo, is that as far back as 15 years ago, this council was asking for the ability to consider that option of water stream. If this goes south, if it doesn't work, there is a provincial registrar who will be collecting information on accidents and mishaps that occur. And I can't imagine that a government would be slow to reconsider the legislation if the first one out of the gate is a mess. They haven't allowed this within towns in Nova Scotia. This is the first in Nova Scotia. It's not the first of Canada, but it's the first in Nova Scotia. And so it's really important to the entire ATV community across the province that we do this right and maintain that opportunity for them.
Good. All right, good to go. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, new business, which is now really huge on my screen. Don't know how that got there. Okay. Yarmouth Airport Task Force, the recommended motion there is that council send a letter of support to the Yarmouth Airport for the creation of a task force with a mandate to seek out long-term stable financial support from the federal and provincial governments. Yep, okay, you want to make the motion? Okay. Second, okay, go ahead, Councillor Dares first and then.
Oh, yeah, just quickly, there has been a subcommittee formed of the Yarmouth Airport International Airport Corporation, and the subcommittee will be developing a mandate in terms of reference for the task force and seeking out key people to serve on that task force. So the process is basically started, and the letter of support would be it would mirror the two letters that we received from the sister municipalities.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
Just can't emphasize enough what happened in the last few weeks and how important that airport played in that. And if we didn't have an airport here that was still operational, it is a mess. But how much worse it could have been without that airport. And anybody that's outside, you would hear them. They're still going. You can still hear, I'm assuming they're the same planes that are still going to check hotspots and stuff. But it was impressive what the community did in Western Nova Scotia. And a lot of that is because we had an airport that allowed us to do that. I can't imagine if, these planes had to go back and fuel up in Halifax or something and then come back, how much worse things could have been. And I did have the opportunity to speak to Colton LeBlanc after the ceremony with the monument, and expressed the same thing to him. And I think a lot of people right now are going to be on side. I'm not saying he is, but I think a lot of people would be on side saying this is an opportune time to really make sure that airport's here for the long term, because I don't think things like this are going to go away. I think we'll have more of these type of incidents where we need to have the airport in place. So it's good timing that this is coming up because of what we just witnessed in the last few weeks.
Good. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Provincial Capital Assistance Program. The recommended motion there is that council commits to the municipal contribution of $45,000, which is 50% municipal contribution, 50% provincial contribution, of the total project budget of $90,000 for the town of Yarmouth's application to the Provincial Capital Assistance Program, PCAP, for the Argyle Street Underground renewal. Councillor Lesser, Councillor Bell, any discussion on this one? Okay. Do you want to tell us what it is?
Sure.
Well, not us, we know what it is,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, so council's aware, we've done a number of underground wastewater, stormwater separation projects over the last number of years. This is a continuation of that work. This is the design phase, so getting the tender documents ready. It doesn't mean that we have a capital budget approved or anything like that, but it allows us to be shovel ready when the funds are available to do that work.
Good. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And Dewey Camo, the recommended motion there, Councillor Cleveland brought it to the table, is that council send a letter of condolence to the family of Dewey Camo, a Yarmouth icon, and acknowledge his many years of service to the community. Okay. Yeah, moved and seconded.
Well, as you know, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the opportunity just to speak very quickly about it, but Paul Dewey Camo passed away a few weeks ago. And despite my best efforts, I am not a young man. And I remember as a boy going to South Centennial School and seeing Dewey show up during recess time on his big tricycle selling candy. And he's done that and brightened the lives of many a child through his efforts for a long, long time. And his kindness knows no bounds. He was always a sweet guy. As I got older, I had the opportunity to work with Dewey on many a fundraising project. And Dewey was just a really special guy. He was unique, and he's truly a Yarmouth icon. And I wanted to take a moment here in public to acknowledge that and to make sure that here at the council table, we talked about what Dewey meant to the community, and certainly to me personally, and I know to the Deputy Mayor as well, and many other children, and not just children, but he's been an amazing person, and he's really going to be missed. And so the motion is to send a letter of condolence, but I wanted to make sure that it was acknowledged here at the council table. Thank you.
I'm very happy to see this on the agenda tonight. Last week at the school, we were lucky enough, actually, South Church owns Dewey's old bike, and the back half of it they have turned into a cooler, and they plan on to hand out some ice creams and whatnot. So the tradition of giving back to the community is still there. But we were lucky enough to borrow it at the high school, and we set it the exact same place that he used to sit at, and we went and got a lot of the old candy that he used to give out, the caramel apple suckers that most people remember and whatnot. And kind of what we did with the kids was we asked them if they knew who he was, and then if it didn't, you kind of had to tell them a little piece about him before they got some candy. So it was nice. It wasn't just here you go. It was this was important to a lot of us, and to see a man with the disabilities that he had overcome those and continue to every day be there. As Councillor Cleveland just said, brightening that day back in the day when a quarter used to go quite a long ways. just thank you for bringing this up, and I think it's great. And I mean, if you're from Yarmouth and you don't know who Dewey is, then, you know, I feel bad for you.
You know, you know. Okay, go ahead, Counselor.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that his real name was Paul. And the way he got his nickname Dewey was that when he was just a baby, his mother had bathed him and then oiled him. And he splashed in the water, and his aunt said, "Oh, look at him, he's all dewy." And it stuck. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Dewey for a couple of years, and the stories that he told, including that one, eventually made its way into a book called About Me. So if anyone gets their hands on it, I have a signed copy at home that I cherish. If you get your hands on it, it's kind of an interesting read.
Counselor Bell.
Well, there you go. Gordon. Maybe you can confirm for me. I think Fred wrote the foreword to that book, didn't he? Fred, you know, everybody around the table is talking about Dewey and their remembrances are, you know, of being kids and, you know, having Dewey come down and with his candy cart. But I'm old enough that I remember Dewey growing up. And, you know, he was one of my husband's good friends. They were childhood chums together, and I can tell you that he was a fully formed human being, fully engaged, and not a cardboard character. He was a human being. Oh my goodness. The stories that they could tell when they were together, just amazing. So thank you, Wade, for bringing Dewey to the table tonight.
Oh, that's right, in the Blue House, and the, yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Aye, contrary, motion carried. We have the municipal boundary review, that's there for information only, but the order is to keep the council at 6. 6 and a mayor, elected at large. Okay, request to present Haley Mood. Don't know who she is. Okay, that council invite Haley Mood, the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Sport Navigator, to present at a future meeting. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. I do know who she is. The number 2 Construction Battalion Monument, that's Deputy Mayor. The recommended motion there is that council grant $5,000 to the number 2 Construction Battalion Monument. Moved by Councillor Cleveland, second by the deputy. Okay, go ahead.
We had Chuck Smith come here a few months ago, and Todd Muse, Andre Camo, and a group of them have worked very hard to come up with a design, get a overall budget. They've applied to the federal government, received $15,000. Modi approved $5,000 the other night. Some local legions have also chipped in, and they are very close to the goal. The idea is to have a monument to the north side of our current cenotaph that recognizes those from the construction battalion, also known as the Black Battalion. There's many of us here, myself included, who have relatives who served on that back in World War I. When they came home, they were not given any credit for their service, basically sent over to build bridges and dig some ditches, and came home to a not so glorious homecoming. And here we are 100 years later, and the Prime Minister last year was in Truro and gave an apology and whatnot. So moving forward with that, I'm very thankful to see this on the agenda tonight. And with this money, Mr. Smith and the group should have reached the goal that they need, and hopefully can move forward with getting things rolling. But before I move on from that, I would just like to say there was a wonderful ceremony last week, the 100-year anniversary of our cenotaph, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Councillor Bell. She did an excellent job. That was a wonderful service. I know there was more people involved in that than just you, but I'd just like to point out that the work that I know that you put into that, and I thought it was really great. So happy to see this and happy to support it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Meadowfields Playground? No, there's no motion there, but I don't think we know what the motions. Go ahead there, Deputy.
We had a request come in quite a while ago, and we've deliberated back and forth. Our Modi at their last meeting approved $30,000 to give to the Meadowfields Playground. As Councillor Dares has spoke about many times, there's not much there for kids to play with. It's also more than just a school playground, it's a community playground. And I would like to make the motion that we give $30,000 to the Meadowfields Playground Association or group to help them with their cause.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. The Yarmouth sign. The recommended motion there is that council direct staff to investigate the installation of a Yarmouth sign in the downtown. Okay, moved, seconded. Is this a, do we know what we're after? Do you know what you're after? Go ahead.
So we've talked about it a few times. I know Councillor Cleveland has as well. And we're not looking for I know the Toronto one and how expensive those can be. But some kind of a sign where people can get their photo done where, they post on social media and they can say they're in Yarmouth. It's I can't see any better advertising. There are resorts I want to go to because I've seen people with their picture next to some of those signs. One thing I did want to mention with cost as well is when I think 3 years ago now, I did talk to a carver on the South Shore, and asked if he could come up with some kind of a design and do something with carving. And that may be something, I'm not sure, I guess we're just investigating staff to look into it without, breaking the bank and to come back and see what could be done. But one option as well could be a carved sign with, chainsaw carving. But the signs that are typically done are the bright, colorful ones that people get their photos with.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? Contrary? Okay. Motion to reconsider basic income. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
We had a presentation a while ago from Catherine Sweets about the basic guaranteed income. Since then, I've had some conversations with people and just read some more information myself, and I thought to give it a fair shake as we had some technology kind of issues in that when it was brought back up, and I know there's people around the table who have a strong opinion and know quite a bit more about this than me, but I thought it was important to bring back up just to make sure we give it a strong second look, and if the other councillors around here that know a bit more would like to speak to it, please feel free to do so.
So, Your Worship. So, Your Worship, our process is that tonight is notice of motion. Okay, so notice is given on what the motion is that you want reconsidered. So at the next meeting, that motion to reconsider would come up, and if seconded and voted on, then that clears the way for you to bring back the original motion and then debate that. So all that's required tonight under our bylaw is notice, because when council makes a decision, it's not easily undone. There is a process, and this is the process.
So we're good on that one then? Yep. Okay, Council Advisory Committees, Committee of the Whole. That's you, Deputy. Go ahead.
Peace and bylaw order, peace and order bylaw. The council make no amendments to the peace and order bylaw as recommended by staff.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Yes, sir.
If I could, we have an audience here, and they're probably wondering why we're passing a motion to do nothing. So, so just for their benefit and anybody else who happens to be watching, asking themselves the same question. So council has a process that every 4 years, we review every policy and bylaw. And that starts with a staff review of the policy or bylaw, and we make a recommendation. In this particular case, the recommendation from staff was to make no changes. And so to have it on the official record that staff's recommendation and council's decision was not to change it, we pass a motion to do nothing.
Thank you. Recommended motion that council amend the fire inspection policy as recommended by the fire chief.
I'll second
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Recommended motion that council confirm the organizational grants for 2023 for the spring intake as presented.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Go
I'd
ahead.
just like to say there was $118,000 worth of requests that came in, and we only had a little less than $35,000 to give out. So we deliberated a lot, we've talked, and we don't arrive at these easily. We like to thank everyone who applies and provides a service to our community, and we try to help where we can, but these are grants that are just kind of there to help you along, and they're not primary grants. So we're happy to help those organizations that do provide for our community, and we don't arrive here easily, so thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Yes, and Your Worship, I just wanted to reiterate that we have changed the grants process this year and split the money available into two buckets. So there is an opportunity for organizations to apply again, and I believe, is the deadline in September? Yeah, deadline is September, so just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Planning Advisory, we didn't have a meeting, did we?
No.
Okay. Reports for information. Mayor's report. Questions for committee chairs. I think Councillor, or Deputy Mayor kind of mentioned what I think we were all thinking as well. But the reenactment at the cenotaph was amazing. There's no other words for it. I think it was wonderful, from the guards standing there, that everybody they couldn't believe that they just stood there without moving. Councillor Bell, I know you're very humble, but the pace that you set, the heart that you brought with it, it was evident, and I think everybody there felt it. We heard just wonderful comments from it. I'm so thrilled that we could do that. And when I say we could do that, it wasn't me. To make it clear, there was a whole team that put that together, including Councillor Bell and Todd, our park supervisor, and just any number of volunteers, that, including the band and everyone else. So very well done and tremendously well received. Just thrilled that could happen. Councillor Heather.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to speak for the Communities in Bloom. Just to let the public know that our judges will be here in July 11th to the 13th. So they will actually be here on the 12th is when they'll be walking the streets, which will actually be the first day of Seafest. So it's kind of exciting that they'll be able to see the parade through the street, the kids parade and the mayor's walk and the party in the park. And so we're excited to show them that part of Yarmouth. So one judge is coming from Saskatchewan and one is coming from Sussex, New Brunswick, and we have another one joining us, a potential future judge from Lunenburg, a man that's interested in judging and is going to come kind of follow in the footsteps of the other two judges as they do Yarmouth. So that will be be exciting. And this week, town staff and the green team and Communities in Bloom have been busy putting out flowers and planting as much as we can. So hopefully they'll be all in bloom and gorgeous in July when the judges come. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Actually, on Communities in Bloom first, it's impressive to see so many posts out there of the amount of volunteer hours that go into making sure the town looks beautiful. And somebody actually said the other day they were wondering if David Solos was okay because they haven't seen him standing out in the middle of the night planting plants by the horse.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that's because they're going to be doing some construction there. So it's interesting to see, like, it's a very dedicated, including a few on this council, very dedicated group. But what I wanted to comment on was the reenactment. And as many times I've gone to any ceremony, Belle, I've never felt that close to something. And that feeling there that day, like I looked at the cenotaph earlier today when I drove by the park, and I looked across from the back parking lot, and it has a completely different meaning to me now. And to have people, like David Solos up there speaking, I don't know why I keep talking about David, but to have him up speaking in costume and to see the period costumes, and I felt like you were right there, and it was definitely the first time in my entire life that I felt like I was part of the history of Yarmouth. And it'd be nice in 100 years after the construction battalion, in 100 years, to make sure that's honored as well. So thank you very much for the work that went into that.
I think it's me.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's you, Councillor Cleveland.
I'm not to kick a dead horse, but I want to talk about that as well. From another kind of vantage point. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. First off, you're absolutely right, Councillor Lesser. And it was funny while I was standing there looking at the names. I've seen the names since I was a small boy. It was always there. And you take a moment and you pause and you think about those losses. But for some reason, maybe it was the mood I was in or something, and I've been thinking a lot about family. And while I was standing there, and I'll get to the reason why I was standing where I was, but I was standing with a group who was live streaming. Next to me, on my left, was a group of kids, some school kids who were there, and one of them was my granddaughter. Oh. And it made me think a little bit about a couple of different things. First off, the fact that they have the opportunity to be there is huge. But more than that, it made me think about those names and all of those young men, because they were young men who we lost in World War I. And I was thinking about all the families that were never because of those losses. It's not just those names that are lost. Those are entire branches of family trees that are gone because of those losses. And it just kind of struck me at the time. And it was very, very powerful. And so I wanted to throw that out there because I've never really considered that before. But, it's easy to say we lost these guys and these are the names. But to think about everything they didn't do and the people they married but didn't have children with, and the children they didn't have, and the contributions that they could have made, and that their children could have made, and that their children's children. It kind of floored me at the time. But back to the original thing. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but I wanted to mention the fact that if you had wanted to, you could have watched this live streamed. And I wanted to take a moment to thank MC Media, who do an absolutely amazing job at everything that they're asked to do. And I reached out to them and asked them if they'd be interested in being involved. And it was as simple as, what do you need us to do? Here's what we're going to do. And just like that, it was done. So a huge thank you to Quinn Taggart and Nick and all of the volunteers at MC Media, to Rick Allwright with Mile East, who helped organize, all of those people. You know what? Without volunteers, we just couldn't do what we do with Communities in Bloom, with MC Media, with everything around here. What makes rural survive and what makes rural vital are the volunteers and the people who dedicate themselves to community service in one way, shape, or form. So just a thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just I will bring a report from the committee to council, just to let you know that we've done a reconciliation of the budget. And thank you to council for providing us the leeway to do this project. And we've come in, the budget has come in at around just $2 over $7,000. We received $2,500 from Veterans Affairs. And so unless the cards of thanks, which we haven't created yet, and there are so many people to thank, as Wade said, unless that tips us over, we're going to be under the $5,000 limit that we set for ourselves. So, and that's due to all of the volunteers. And I really have to take an opportunity to give a shout out to Todd Muse, our park supervisor. He invited me on the committee in November of last year, and when I sat at the table, the vision was already fully realized, and he just needed to put people in the places that they needed to be in order to get it done. And it is really a credit to that volunteer team from, the veterans. They are passionate about this work, and they knew what they wanted to do, and I'm just really grateful that council gave them the opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Councillor Heather?
Thank you. I just wanted to speak further to what Councillor Lesser happened to mention, was about the Milton Triangle flower bed. And you won't see Dave Solos out there this summer putting flowers there, because it will be torn up later in the summer. So the decision was made not to plant flowers. I know a lot of people are watching for them, and we'll miss them, but hopefully next year we'll have an even better place to put them. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions or comments? Good. All right. No additions, because we don't do that. Can we?
Well, just given our recent policy change, should we eliminate that from the agenda?
Yeah, we can. Well, I don't know. There might be an emergency. Yeah, I'm just thinking there might be, might be an emergency. Okay. Go ahead.
It came up at the accessibility committee the other day as well. Can you add things to the agenda in committee work, or does that only apply to council? Because I wasn't sure at the time when I wanted to add an agenda item if we were permitted to do so.
So, Your Worship, the intention of this is so that there aren't last-minute surprises or questions put before council, because you're a decision-making body. But at Committee of the Whole, we don't have that same policy, because Committee of the Whole doesn't make decisions. It only gives advice, and so then you have the chance for sober second thought. So I would say that same approach should be taken at all of our advisory committees, that if you come to an advisory committee with something, add it to the agenda. They don't have to give advice that night, right? They can research and come back with advice when the time is right. But the intent with that policy is only really to affect this table, the council meeting, so that you aren't caught off guard and being asked a question the night you're going to make the decision.
Good. Okay, date, approval of invoices, that the various invoices be approved for payment. Councillor Bell, second by the deputy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Date of next meeting is July 13th, and we are going to in camera.